Hello, everybody. Let's give a few more attendees the opportunity to join in. We'll begin in about 2 minutes. Okay, we have quite the room, about 22. I think we're good to start. Okay, so hello everyone and welcome. My name is Hannah Iskinder, and I'm the Africa Regional Lead for ASIF at BFA Global. It's great to have so many of you joining us. So far, I can see we're at about 22 attendees. That's fantastic, and I'm sure more will roll in as we go on. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge our partners who have made this facility possible. ASIF, which stands for Adaptation SMEs Innovation Facility, and is funded by the Adaptation Fund under the Adaptation Fund Climate Innovation Accelerator, implemented by UNIDO in collaboration with BFA. We're grateful for UNIDO team for being with us and for carrying out this webinar in collaboration with us. While we use the term SME in the program title, we hope that you know that for us, this also includes startups. It also includes social entrepreneurs and other founder-led ventures. So we don't want you to mentally think that it's a rigid term only for SMEs. Yes, thank you, Grace, for moving on to slide 2. Today's session is really about helping you decide whether ASIF Ignite is the right fit for your venture, and if so, how you can apply. Over the next 45 minutes, we'll walk you through what ASIF is, what Ignite offers, what we're looking for, how the application process works, and then we'll leave some time for your questions towards the end, about 10 minutes to be precise. A quick housekeeping rule, as we go on, if any questions come to mind, please feel free to put them in the chat, and we'll either cover them in the chat if somebody is able to respond in good time, or we'll also cover them at the end of the session. With that, I'd like to hand over to Sami from UNIDO, who will now carry over the next couple of slides.
Thank you, Hannah. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome from my side as well. I'd like to begin by introducing the ASIF team. From UNIDO's side, we have Sanyang, Chidi, Susu, and myself. Next slide, please. And from BFA Global's side, we have Rasima, Abhishek, Hannah, Maria, Michelle, and Grace. Next slide, please. Thank you. So what is ASIF? ASIF stands for Adaptation SMEs Innovation Facility. And if you look on the right-hand side, we will see that ASIF is a sub-program of the Adaptation Fund Climate Innovation Accelerator, also known as AFCIA. ASIF aims to provide business acceleration, support for deployment and scale-up, and a strong ecosystem and learning component. And ASIF is designed to support SMEs developing innovative climate adaptation solutions for vulnerable communities. Next slide, please. If we look at ASIF in terms of figures, we can see that it is a 10 million US dollar global facility spanning over 5 years, and it started in April 2026, and it is aimed to support more than 100 SMEs to scale through Ignite and Propel. Next slide, please. ASIF focuses on 3 critical regions: Africa, Asia, and Latin America. And if you are interested whether a specific country is eligible for ASIF, you may visit the Adaptation Fund site under Designated Authorities, and you will see a list of eligible countries there. Next slide, please. ASIF is made up of three components, with the first two, Ignite and Propel, being led by BFA Global, and the third component, Ecosystem and Learning, being led by UNIDO. Ignite specifically focuses on early stage support, which are SMEs at technology readiness levels 3 to 4 and business readiness levels 2 to 4. Propel, on the other hand, focuses on growth and scaling support, with SMEs ranging from technology readiness levels 5 to 7 and business readiness levels 5 to 7 as well. UNIDO puts this all together with component 3, which focuses on evidence, knowledge, and community. Next slide, please. Regarding regions, ASIF will function through sequenced rollout cohorts. Africa is the first one, with Ignite applications already open since 17 June 2026. Latin America and Asia will follow soon with the expected dates shown on this slide. ASIF focuses on 5 solution areas, and each region will have specific solution focus areas by cohort, which include food and agri value chains, financial services, blue economy, urban adaptation and resilience, and health. For the most up-to-date information regarding these calls and dates, please check BFA Global's website. Next slide, please. We aim for ASIF to be a space where partners can engage in meaningful ways. Some may contribute through mentoring SMEs, others through co-hosting and speaking. Partners can also collaborate on research, and of course, partners can help direct the ASIF calls to the right entrepreneurs and SMEs. Next slide, please. And finally, through ASIF, we plan to encourage and accelerate new innovations and risk-taking, replicate and scale up successful innovations, enhance access and capacities, and generate and share the evidence base. With that, thank you very much for listening, and back over to you, Hannah.
Thank you, Sami. Now with that overview on the program at large, I'd like to zero in on what Ignite and Propel are. So ASIF runs 2 tracks of different stages of growth. Ignite is for the early stage SMEs with a prototype they haven't tested yet with real users. So that's the one to the left in blue, who want to validate it, strengthen their business model, and build early traction. The second, which is the one in orange to the right, is Propel, and that is for growth stage ventures already in the market, looking to scale and raise. And the first call opens in a couple of months. So if that's a closer fit for you, you can register your interest through the expression of interest form on the BFA Global website under the ASIF subpage, and we'll notify you when that particular program launches. One question we've received through a few of the webinar registrations is about funding. ASIF Ignite does not provide direct funding. However, later this year, we'll launch ASIF Propel, which will include a significant grant and tailored support assistance for selected ventures further along the journey. And the curriculum will be conducted in English, so those who speak English are welcome to apply. Next slide, please. Ignite. So Ignite at its core is an 8-week virtual program designed for early stage climate adaptation founders who've already built and are ready to test it with real users. One thing I'd like to emphasize is that Ignite is about building your idea from scratch. Isn't about building your idea from scratch. It's about helping you validate what you've already built. Throughout the program, you'll receive interactive workshops, one-on-one office hours with technical specialists in climate, business, AI, and more, practical support AI tools, and a community of founders tackling similar challenges. One thing that differentiates Ignite is how we use AI. We're not expecting applicants to already be AI experts. Instead, we show founders how AI can help them validate customer assumptions faster, analyze information more efficiently, improve product design, and strengthen decision-making throughout the validation process. The expected time commitment for the program is around 10 hours per week, though we can be flexible for live sessions with founders who have proven caregiving responsibilities. We encourage female applicants to apply. And by the end of the program, you must be asking yourselves, what do I get out of this? A strong business model, evidence that customers actually want your solution or not, clearer proof climate adaptation impact of climate adaptation impact, and the opportunity to present your ventures at a virtual founder showcase to investors and climate ecosystem partners. I think we can move to the next slide now, Grace. Okay. So what are we actually looking for? The simplest way to think about it is we're looking for founders who've moved beyond the idea stage but haven't yet commercialized. If you have something tangible that people can interact with, that would be a form of a functional prototype, but you haven't yet gathered enough information that people can actually want it or that your business model works. So you're ready to validate whether this prototype would work and be developed into an early product. For the first African cohort, as you can see right there in the second column, we're specifically looking for ventures who work in food and agricultural value chains. The important part isn't about whether you're working in agriculture, your solution must also have a clear adaptation and resilience benefit. Another important point is that your business should already have or be moving towards earned revenue for customers rather than fully being reliant on grants or donations. Basically, what that means is the NGO model likely wouldn't be a good fit for the Ignite program. We're also committed to supporting inclusive innovation. Like I mentioned earlier, we encourage female applicants to apply, and we also encourage applications from women founders, ventures led by women or with women in leadership teams, and businesses whose solutions are designed to support or benefit women. We can move to the next slide now, please. Okay. These could include, you had me talk about food and agriculture. This could include inputs, growing, land and water, after harvest, and processing and selling. Some good examples would be agricultural inputs, farming, irrigation, fisheries, post-harvest, storage, processing, market access, financing, insurance, and many others along the value chain. When you're thinking about whether your solution is a good fit, ask yourself one simple question. How does it help climate vulnerable communities adapt to or become more resilient to climate-related changes? If you can answer that clearly, you're probably thinking about adaptation in the right way, meaning you'd probably be a good fit. That's why we've included examples in processing, sales, and financial services that in their original form may not tie directly to the sector we're targeting. However, if the solutions can absolutely be considered, as long as they have a clear adaptation benefit and they're simply improving efficiency instead of simply improving efficiency and increasing profits. Next slide, Grace. Okay. What won't fit into this score? That's clearly highlighted here on this slide. Companies that are currently only in the idea stage, so haven't yet created a prototype or a form of, they do not have any adaptation link. So for instance, if you are a company within sales or insurance or finance, and there's no direct link to any climate vulnerable communities within food and agriculture, it won't be a good fit. Outside of the food and agricultural sector as well, and if your company is also too mature, like I mentioned, the stage that Ignite falls under, and that we also have another program coming up towards the end of the year for further stage companies, and that there's no farmer benefit through your solution. If your solution is strong, but not in food and agriculture, please register your interest in the expression of interest form, which sits in our website, and we'll also show a QR code for at the end of the slide deck. Now we'll transition into the application section where my colleague Rasima will walk us through.
Great. Thank you, Hannah and Sami. And hi, everyone. As Hannah and Sami mentioned earlier, my name is Rasima, and I'm the ASIF lead from BFA Global. And I'm here to walk you through the application process. Now, the application form, as I just put on the chat as well, is embedded on our website, bfaglobal.com/ASIF. And you can click on the Apply Now button and you'll be directed to the application form. Should you want to refer someone, then there is a referral link at the bottom of that very page that you can also use. Now, in terms of the application form itself, I'll walk you through what to expect here. The form is actually broken down across 4 specific sections, and it would take about 45 minutes for a very thoughtful applicant who has their details at hand to fill in the specific sections. The first section is really an acknowledgement section that focuses on a list of criteria that the facility cannot support. It relates to, these criteria primarily relate to harmful practices or practices that are related to human rights violations or other such global non-commit practices that we just cannot support. So you will be requested to acknowledge that you are not party to any of these activities. Should you be party to these activities, you may not be reviewed for future selection process. This is a fairly short 4 sections, very clear in terms of these are the criteria that you may or may not meet. The next 3 sections are really where the chunk of the application sits. And this is where we would learn more about you, the problem you're working on, the solution and the prototype that you've built, as well as the business model that you're thinking about, and a little bit about how you're even thinking about applying AI at this stage. It's totally fine, like Hannah mentioned, that if you're still experimenting with AI, that's great. It would just be good for us to understand where you're at in that journey. Now, the questions are basically a combination of drop downs and text fields, where we would ask you to, in the text fields, we would ask you to explain the problem you're working on, why you're working on this problem, what your solution is, how you've designed your prototype, and how you plan to reach your target end users. For the specific 8 weeks, you will need a set of test users with whom you'll test your prototype in the field. So that is, a little bit of what we will ask you in the questions as well. And there will be other similar questions, really just to understand that solution and the approach that you are thinking of better. Now, one quick note here on AI and the use of AI in applications. We understand that AI can help you articulate your responses better, and that is completely fine. We actually expect it. But please avoid copying and pasting generic responses that would tell us very little about you or your solution in the application, because it makes it very hard for us to understand what's really unique about you and how Ignite can really meaningfully support you in your journey. So where possible, please try to bring in your experiences, your insights and inputs. Of course, you can use AI to help you articulate that better. That's totally fine. On the next slide, this is the application form. On the next slide, this slide, you will see how we would assess your applications. So there are a few different things that get assessed. Right at the beginning, there's a little bit of the basic fit, like your location, your stage, which is at the prototype stage. If you have the time commitment for Ignite, that you are not involved in any of the practices that may exclude you, things like that. There's also a very clear focus on the adaptation relevance, just like Hannah mentioned. And this is where we really think about, that clear link from a critical climate hazard that is significantly affecting a population that's vulnerable to its negative impact, such that they're unable to really make ends meet for themselves, and how your solution would actually support them. So that level of relevance we would look at in detail. We'd also look at the readiness level of your prototype. The intent of these 8 weeks is actually to help you pressure test your assumptions, test this prototype in field, help you, iterate through it, look at the design elements, look at your business model levers as a result, think about that climate impact link, and then build out a stronger strategy and approach based on the proof points that you will generate through the 8 weeks as you work with us. And this is where we would also, as a result, look at the applicants where Ignite's value will be most additive. And we have a few of those questions in the application form as well. Beyond that, there's the team and problem fit, thinking about the team, where their experience has been, why they've really selected this problem, what's really a driver in this space for them, what does it fit, or is it a random selection? Oh, I feel inspired by this, but I have no idea what I'm working in. So we'll take a look at that level in there as well. And beyond that, the business model potential, very much as Hannah mentioned, there really should be a credible path towards earning revenue. And so anything that focuses on grants and grant funding may not really be a fit for Ignite. And finally, responsible innovation as well. How do we think about risks? How do we think about whether the solution does any harm? Are there risks there? Can we mitigate them, or can we be aware of them at this point in time? To what extent are we also supporting or serving women customers or women in the value chain? And those are certain elements within the assessment that we will look at as well. Applications close on the 17th of August. And what happens from now on, from the webinar onwards? That's on the next slide. Grace, if you could, thank you. And so between now and 17th August, like we mentioned, you have the time to apply. These application forms, you can actually take your time to complete them. It's not that you have to complete them in one sitting. So long as you have the same device and the same browser that you're using, if you click on the link later on, you will be redirected to the application page, and you can continue where you left off. So you can take your time between now and 17th August, although applications will be reviewed on a rolling basis, which means that the sooner you submit, the sooner we will review. And if we have any clarifying questions or would like to invite you to a 15-20-minute interview, we would do that sooner as well. During this period, we actually will also open some office hours, and these are just 15 to 20-minute blocks with the ASIF team where you can schedule some time and ask us very specific questions about the application if you have any. These are completely optional, only to support you if you have questions. Once the application process closes, or the application window closes, we will move into the cohort selection process and finalizing our cohort of about 10 to 15 companies for this particular Ignite Africa cohort 1. And during this time, as I mentioned, we might still continue with some level of due diligence with short interviews or clarifying emails. Shortlisted candidates will be notified via email, and they will also receive a draft of the agreement that will cover what to expect from this Ignite period or journey that you're about to join, and also cover some standard engagement and operating protocols in terms of how we will all sort of operate. The agreement, once you sign it, is really the sign of formal acceptance into Ignite. We hope to launch the cohort in October and conclude it by December, since it's 8 weeks. The first, week 0 is really just onboarding, getting you on and making sure that you're ready for your 8 weeks of curriculum. And in the closing week, you'll also have a founder showcase and feedback forum that Hannah had mentioned earlier. So this is the process and the journey until the end of the program. We did receive a question about what happens post-program, and we'll answer that within the Q&A with Sami as well. But for now, I'll hand it back to Hannah.
Thank you, Rasima. I think that was extremely clear in how they should move about their application. Now we'll transition into the FAQ. And thank you, Osama, for putting your question in the chat. And your question is about, let me just read it verbatim. You mentioned companies. Does it mean individuals are not eligible? So to begin with, before I answer any questions, we have about, it's like what, 15 minutes to answer these questions, meaning that in case some of these questions cannot be addressed during this particular session, I want to point you towards the FAQ section of our website where we've highlighted a lot of the frequently asked questions that would go into an application such as this and answered them as thoroughly as we can beyond the office hours that Rasima just mentioned. So in regards to your question, Osama, I'll take a stab at responding to it. For Ignite, it's encouraged that you have a registered business. However, complete registration before you start the program is not an application requirement. We would hope that the intention is by the end of the Ignite program, you would have been able to register your company. But if you mean by individual, if what you mean by as an individual rather than a company, as a solo founder, if the individual bit is what you are trying to focus on, we do accept solo founders and different team compositions. That wouldn't be a differentiator that would put you out of the bucket of applicants that we would consider. I've seen another question. With an Ignite team member, okay. Oh, so is that just the opening? Can I have a one-on-one with an Ignite team member to ask questions and confer clearer alignments? Yeah, sure, definitely. You can. After you've gone through the FAQs and you're sure that none of the questions that you have fall into that bucket, we'll be sharing a couple of links to Calendly where you'll be able to book a session with one of the Ignite team members, the ASIF team members, to answer the questions that you may have. I can see another question has come in. Can you please mention something about Propel stage? Okay. So we got a few questions about the Propel stage. So maybe, Grace, we could go back to the earlier slide where we broke down the differentiators between Ignite and Propel. Just further. There we go. Perfect. So where we sit right now is Ignite with all of the different eligibility criteria that we've mentioned. However, there is Propel, which we've mentioned is coming later on in the year. And the first cohort of Propel, I believe, Rasima, is also going to be in food systems and agriculture in similar fashion. However, Propel is for growth stage companies. So these are companies that already have their products being tested out in the market and are looking to deepen and scale their adaptation impact, reach more end beneficiaries and strengthen their operational ability. Propel will also, like I mentioned, have a financing facility, which will include both venture building support and cash. However, specifics to those will be shared during the call of applications, which will happen in a couple of months. And a good way for you to be able to differentiate, because there's a lot of different moving parts and specifics, whether you're a good fit for Ignite and Propel, we've actually broken that down very clearly on the website and also in a section of the FAQs if you're not so sure about where your company sits. In case anybody wants to add on to what I've shared? No? Rasima? No? Okay. We can go on to the next question. Can I represent a project I did at university degree level, which addresses some of the interest areas, such as water management, but I left my prototype at the university last month? That's a very interesting question. So maybe for a question like that, I would propose that it's put on email, right? Because it doesn't particularly sound like it's still in concept. I don't know if you mean a physical prototype was left at your university, so it might be a bit difficult to address this right now during a Q&A when you don't have the ability to respond. So you could send this out to, yes, Rasima.
No, please finish, Hannah. I think you were going to say you can send it out to reach out to the team with your specific
Yeah.
situation, and then we can assess and let you know, or you could book in an office hour, and we can discuss it directly with you. I think a quick rule of thumb here is really just that if you have a functional prototype that is ready to be tested in a target market that falls within the focus areas that we are looking at, that has a very clear climate adaptation link that can support vulnerable communities better adapt to climate hazard risks. And you do have, a pathway, if you're not already registered, a pathway to actually register a company before the end of the year, basically, then you can apply. More of the specifics, but if you don't have access to your prototype, then that would be a little bit difficult for you to follow through during the 8 weeks, because we will pressure test the prototype with you in your target market. So that's probably where the nuance is that we don't really get from your message.
Yeah. I can see he's also just added that it's a physical prototype. So yeah, that's true. I can see there's another question about refundable or a non-returnable grant. So we can't touch on that right now because there's no grant being offered under Ignite. However, when the time does come for Propel, please do feel free to look through what the offerings are, and I'm sure all of those will be outlined. We've generated 14K USD from our pilot. Are we still a fit? So I would say you're more a fit for Propel than you would be a fit for Ignite. Yes, you're more a fit for Propel than you would be fit for Ignite. Any more questions in the chat? Maybe as we wait to see if any more questions are okay. Okay, fantastic. No. All right. Okay. Great, Osama. So that seems to be that you would be on track. So that information, you'd put it into the application form because there's a section that asks for those specifics, whether you're on the journey to registration sometime back post-COVID. We started off sometime back post-COVID, have had to redesign. Are we a fit? So I would say that time isn't the biggest component really, because a lot of solutions could be in design, still concept design stage for a relatively long time. So the differentiator would likely be have you developed your prototype, be it a software or a physical prototype? Do you have a prototype that you're already developing and now would like to test? And I'm not sure I'm seeing that in that chat. So maybe when you respond with that, we can now respond. I have a few questions that would likely be asked in a Q&A as we wait for more questions to come in. If I'm not based in Africa, can I still apply if my operation operates in Africa? So applicants should be operating in or primarily serving African communities. So what that means is that if you're not based in Africa, but your team and operations are, then you are welcome to apply. I actually met a founder who asked me this question last week. So if your team does operate here and your solution is serving the African market, you're more than welcome to apply. Another question as I wait to see if any more will come in the chat. What does the 8-week program actually look like week by week? So the 8 weeks are structured around a group of workshops with AI and climate experts and specialists. So this will include the one-on-one office hours that we mentioned earlier and access to curated resource library where we will work with you as the founders to validate your businesses, and impact hypothesis and build early traction for your solutions and develop the operational foundations you need to test your solutions at scale. Trying to see, no more questions still. How much time do you need to commit? Yes, Rasima, please go on.
Thank you, Hannah. Just to add to the point that you just mentioned about the 8 weeks and what to expect. So we can share a little more structure to the 8 weeks. Each week is really themed in terms of where are you at today with your prototype, and what will the next week really get you to push the needle towards the final piece, which is I have proof points to showcase that this prototype really works in my target market or not. And here's the business model, as well as this AI playbook that can help me operate faster. And so during these 8 weeks, in the first 2 to 3 weeks, you'll actually have on one day a live working session with the experts that will be telling you more about specific topics related to pressure testing, your hypotheses, and your problem statements, and thinking about how we can design our field tests for testing the prototype among target users, and how to really design that experiment so that when you're in the field, which will also happen during the 8 weeks, you're actually deploying the tests amongst those target users to get those first insights. All of this will also be overlaid with what are some of the tools and methods that you can leverage in this day and age to help you do this faster and smarter. And then once you have insights from the field, what can we learn from these insights, and how do we iterate on our prototype and design? Each week will basically have that type of class, and then another day will actually be what we're calling lab sessions, which is where what you've learned in theory, you will actually apply in practice, leveraging the specific tools that would make most sense for you to do that. So there could be the use of large language models. There could be the use of very specific types of design tools as well. And while Ignite doesn't have, grants similar to the kind that Propel would have, Ignite does have a certain amount of allowance to help afford some of these tool subscriptions, so that you can do your work more effectively. So that is also part of the 8 weeks and slightly beyond. Thank you. Anna, back to you.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Rasima. Actually, just piggybacking on that, there was a question that we got before during the registration for the webinar, and the question was asking what happens beyond the 8 weeks. And I think, Sami, you can step in to respond to that one.
Yes, sure. So as we know that component 3 is led by UNIDO, and it aims to like collect all the lessons that we learned through Ignite and Propel, of course, and it builds an evidence base on what it takes for SMEs to deliver adaptation at scale. So insights generated with our cohorts are shared back with the wider founder community, and then you can learn from that and move on forward from that. Yes.
Thank you for that, Sami. Yeah, that's a good response. I'm seeing a few more questions have come in the chat, so I can also take a stab at answering those. The first question, let me just read it verbatim. In my case, does it mean do I have to go into my pocket to obtain the components I used earlier to make the prototype? Just curious if I can be supported, however little, or I must figure things out myself. So, like we mentioned, the Ignite component of this program does not offer grant funding. So, if you would have to make the arrangements to get the components that you need to assemble your prototype once again, or to register as well. And I can see the other question is, it's food value addition blue economy targeting fish and waste in rural Kenya was successful before COVID, but now needs to tweak the model a little. So that one is a bit of a different one. It was a complete pivot, and this is basically a new solution still running off of the success of the older one, that one could potentially fall under Ignite. However, if it's just a slight tweak to the model and it's already an existing solution that you are reviving, that would likely fall under Propel. Am I right, Rasima?
Yes, I think that makes sense.
Yeah. Then I can see another one. I ran a palm farm and would like to expand it into biochar. Will this be a good fit for the program? I think it would be a very good fit for the program. However, it can't still be a concept that you're thinking about. It has to be something that you're already trying to implement. However, I think that that's a good solution that would fall within the value chain. I can see there's another question. Is there any form of funding available? So I think we've mentioned this now a few times. And then, yeah, I think that's all of the current questions answered. I'm not seeing any more that are pending. So I think we can now transition into the last slide. The second last slide. Yes. Fantastic. Thanks, Grace. So this is the point where I now put the call of action, and I now turn the tables and request you to now take a look at our website, go through the eligibility criteria we've outlined during this webinar, and also that you'll see in the application form and also in our FAQ section. We've tried to be as informative as we can be to answer as many questions as we can in advance of them even coming up. We look forward to receiving those applications. The applications close on the 17th of August. Rasima shared the link earlier, I believe, to the website. So you can access that, or you can also use your phone to scan this QR code. It'll also lead you to the website. And we would also love to connect with you on LinkedIn. You can see the UNIDO LinkedIn page there, and also the BFA LinkedIn page there. And this call was being recorded, so we'll also make arrangements to upload this call on YouTube, where you can also refer to it, and it can answer some questions you may have as you're filling the application, or in case you know anybody you would like to refer, you can also share this with them as well. And we thank you for all the time that you've spent. The last 45 minutes have been productive. Thank you for all the questions that have come up. We hope that we've addressed them as best as we could. But as Rasima mentioned, we have the ASIF email, and we also will be sharing a Calendly links where you can also schedule a one-on-one call starting in about 2 weeks from now, in case you still have any questions after you've gone through the website and everything. And we thank you all for your time. Thank you, Sami and Rasima, for also walking the founders through what the program is going to look like. And yeah, I wish everyone a fantastic evening.